Okay, so I think I was at observation, so quantitative observation. Um, is where the researcher will go over a list of certain things they're looking for. So if they're looking at skill based at a football match, it will be number of successful passes, number of successful tackles, number of successful crosses, number of successful dribbles, shots on target, goals. So the advantages of this is to see them in the natural environment. You get to identify strengths and weaknesses of a player, which can help you determine where they'll play. So you go and watch someone play centre mid, but they're getting 100% cross rate. But their short passing isn't excellent. Maybe you decide to play them on the wing. It also looks at all aspects of the sport. All aspects are credited. So instead of just looking at who's the goal scorer, how many goals did they score, you'll be looking at the defenders as well. How many tackles did they make? How many successful tackles did they make? How many passes did the midfielders make? How many saves did the goalkeeper make? The disadvantages of this, very time consuming. So you could have a whole team to watch, and to get around watching 11 players, you can have a video it, watch it back, and list it all, which is very time consuming. Or another factor is it could be quite costly. Hire out 11 other researchers to come and do one player each. Covert observation is when they don't know you're watching, so this brings ethical issues, and obviously there's social desirability. If they do know you're there, they might change the way they're performing, the way they're acting, just to please you, or they might change because they know they're being watched. Experiment is split into two categories: laboratory and field. The main difference is laboratory is in a lab, field is in a natural environment. But an experiment is an experiment. You have an independent variable that you're going to change, whilst trying to control every single variable, and see what the change in that independent variable has on the dependent variable. The advantages of a laboratory experiment is that it's internally valid. You know that the data you get is because of the independent variable, because you can control all the other factors, which is the advantage. You control every single factor, but you change one, and you know that every result you get, the dependent variable is changing because of the independent variable. But with that disadvantages, it's very artificial, not externally valid. You can't go and say you're adding a crowd of 6 people to a shooting drill. You can't then go and say, right, all professional football players play better, or have high levels of anxiety when they're playing with a crowd than when they're training and there's no one there, because it's very artificial. You've got a specific amount of people, you're controlling every other factor, there might be other factors that come into it, and it's also very expensive to hire a lab, all the equipment, very expensive. Field experiment is sort of the opposite, so it's very externally valid because it's in a natural environment. Although it is controlling factors and everything is controlled to an extent, it is more easily generalized because it's out in the open, in the natural environment. It's not artificial in a lab. Disadvantages: not internally valid. You can't control all the factors, so someone might walk past with a dog when you're doing a shooting drill, and that might put them off. You can't control that, and that makes it not internally valid, not very reliable. You don't know if it was the crowd or the dog that was making him shoot worse or better. You don't know. There are different types of experiment: repeated measures, crossover, independent groups, and matched pairs. So this is when doing a lab or field experiment, how the researcher will gather their participants and carry out the experiments. So repeated measures is when the same group of people will do pre-test, so take the shooting drill again, they'll take some shots with no crowd. They'll do the manipulated test, so when they've got the crowd, and then they'll do the test again after with no crowd to see the improvement or whatever. Crossover, this is usually when there's two independent variables. The group of people will be split into two groups, and they'll both do the manipulated test, but they'll do it in a different order. So one will do with the test with the crowd, one will do without the crowd, then they'll switch over, and it's designed to try and eliminate the factor of the fact they're being better in post-test because of practice. Independent groups, it's when there are two different groups of people, the researchers just gather two different groups of people and they do the different conditions. So they'll do with crowd, without crowd, and then you get their data like that. Match pairs, the same as independent groups. You get two different groups of people, they do the different conditions and you get your data, but the people in the groups are very similar. The people in the two different groups are very similar. So they play a same level of football, they scored roughly the same amount of goals a season, they got the same rough amount of shots on target their last game, they're the same height, the same weight, that sort of thing, same age. The example I've put in there is VO2 max. If you're doing a test about the VO2 max or using the VO2 max, the two groups will have people that have similar VO2 max scores. That's it.